Tom Jenkins had never felt so defeated in his life. At 23, he had envisioned himself standing at the top of the academic world, making his parents proud, and finally breaking the generational chain of poverty. But reality had other plans. His scholarship only covered a fraction of his tuition fees, and despite juggling 2 part-time jobs, one as a library assistant and another as a waiter, he could barely afford a single decent meal a day. On a particularly cold winter evening, Tom dragged himself into the grand ballroom of the Imperial Hotel. Tonight, he was assigned to a high-profile charity gala, known to attract the city's richest and most influential people. While polishing glasses at the bar, he admired the shining chandeliers, the sound of a grand piano floating in the air, and women in sparkling gowns gliding across the marble floors like swans. It was in that moment of silent awe that he first saw her, Mrs. Margaret Ellis. She arrived late, her presence commanding the room instantly. Her silver hair was styled immaculately, and a diamond necklace glittered against her pale, graceful neck. The older guests whispered respectfully as she passed by. Everyone seemed to know her story, a shrewd businesswoman who had taken over her late husband's empire and multiplied it tenfold through wise investments and real estate deals. But Tom only knew her as Table 9, Martini Extra Dry. When he approached her table to serve drinks, he noticed her eyes sharp, intelligent, yet strangely gentle as they lingered on him longer than he expected. Young man, she said in a voice that carried authority and warmth at once. What's your name? Tom, ma'am, he answered, trying not to stammer. And what does Tom dream of? She asked, tilting her head slightly. Tom froze. No one had asked him that in years. I want to finish my studies and maybe travel, help my family, live without always worrying. His voice trailed off, embarrassed. Margaret studied him carefully, her lips curling into a small, knowing smile. A practical dreamer. How refreshing. The rest of the evening blurred into a string of quick orders, clinking glasses, and polite nods. But Margaret's eyes seemed to follow him around the room. At the end of the night, as he was leaving through the staff exit, he found her waiting outside in a sleek black limousine. She waved him over, and though every nerve in his body screamed to run, curiosity overpowered him. You're too bright to waste away serving drinks, she said, opening a small velvet box and revealing a sapphire ring. Marry me, Tom. His mouth went dry. At first, he thought it was a cruel joke, some rich person's twisted entertainment, but her eyes were unwavering, almost tender. You don't have to love me, she continued softly. Just be my companion, my friend. In return, you will have everything you need, your debts paid, your family taken care of, and freedom to pursue your dreams. Tom felt his heart thudding painfully. A million thoughts raced through his mind: betrayal of his values, fear of judgment, the moral weight of marrying someone 50 years his senior. But then images of his mother working double shifts, and his younger sister skipping meals to save money for textbooks flooded his head. One deep breath. He whispered. Margaret's eyes gleamed with a strange light as she slid the ring onto his trembling finger. At that moment, he convinced himself he was in control, that he was making a smart, strategic choice. He believed he had outwitted life, finally stepping into a world where he would no longer be a powerless bystander. Little did he know, this golden opportunity was merely the opening move in a much darker, twisted game. Just 2 weeks after that fateful night, Tom found himself standing under a grand floral archway in Margaret's private garden. Only a few close acquaintances attended the ceremony, most of them older, dressed in designer suits and elegant hats, whispering among themselves with forced smiles and polite claps. Tom wore a tailored navy suit that felt like it belonged to someone else. The crisp fabric clung to him awkwardly, and each polished step toward Margaret felt heavier than the last. He stole a glance at her. Margaret looked radiant in an ivory gown that shimmered subtly under the morning sun. Her face, heavily made up, seemed almost mask-like, and her smile never quite reached her eyes. When they exchanged vows, Tom's voice cracked. He repeated the words mechanically, ignoring the tightness in his chest. Margaret, however, spoke with chilling calmness and unwavering confidence, her eyes fixed on him as though she were studying every flicker of doubt. As they kissed, the guests politely clapped, but Tom could feel the weight of their silent judgment pressing down on him like a heavy cloak. He avoided eye contact, focusing instead on the soft rustle of rose petals falling around them, wishing he could disappear into the ground. After the wedding, they moved into Margaret's sprawling mansion on the outskirts of the city. The estate looked like something out of a historical novel, towering marble pillars, manicured rose gardens, and a driveway long enough to lose sight of the main road. Inside, each room was an opulent display of her wealth: crystal chandeliers, antique paintings, Persian rugs, and floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with rare volumes. Even the hallways smelled of polished wood and expensive perfume. Tom was given a wardrobe full of designer clothes, new gadgets, and a sleek sports car parked in the garage. Margaret assigned him a personal chef, a tailor, and a fitness coach. He had everything he once thought he wanted, yet, every night, he felt a strange emptiness echoing in his chest. Margaret treated him kindly in public, always holding his arm, introducing him as my brilliant young husband. But behind closed doors, her eyes turned watchful, and her voice carried an unspoken warning. At dinner, she would ask detailed questions. Where had he been? Who did he speak to? Did he enjoy the library today? On the surface, it felt like care, but beneath it, Tom sensed a controlling edge. He began to realize that in exchange for financial freedom, he had sold not just his youth but also his privacy and independence. When he lay awake at night, listening to the soft ticking of the ornate grandfather clock in their bedroom, he wondered if he had made the worst decision of his life. A week into his new life, the initial shock and excitement faded into a constant undercurrent of unease. Tom found himself wandering the endless halls, trying to distract his restless mind. One morning, while Margaret was away at a charity board meeting, Tom ventured into the eastern wing of the mansion, a section he hadn't explored before. This wing felt colder, the air heavier. Dust coated some of the furniture, and the paintings on the walls depicted stern-looking men in outdated clothing, their eyes seeming to follow him as he moved. At the very end of a narrow hallway, Tom noticed a large oak door, different from all the others. Its handle was tarnished, and the lock was old-fashioned, almost Victorian in style. He pressed his ear against it, expecting silence, but instead heard a faint mechanical hum from inside. His curiosity clawed at him. Over the next few days, he began to study Margaret's routine carefully. She always left her study key in the side drawer before dinner and often went to bed early after a glass of wine. On the seventh day, he finally made his move. That evening, after pretending to retire to his room early, Tom waited until Margaret's steady breathing signaled she was asleep. With trembling fingers, he retrieved the key from her study drawer and crept down the darkened hallway, the cold floor biting at his bare feet. His heart thundered in his ears as he slipped the key into the lock and slowly turned it. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit room that smelled of old paper and faded perfume. What he saw made his blood run cold. The walls were completely covered with photographs, dozens, maybe hundreds. Each photo featured a young man, around Tom's age, standing beside Margaret, smiling awkwardly or looking uncertain. Some photos were black and white, clearly decades old, while others were more recent, showing young men in modern clothing. Beneath each picture, a small brass plaque displayed a date. Tom stepped closer, reading some of the names and dates. The timeline stretched back nearly 50 years. On the far side of the room stood a row of ornate wooden drawers, each labeled with neat initials. Tom hesitated, then slowly opened one. Inside were personal items, watches, rings, handwritten notes, and passports, mementos of lives that had simply vanished. In one corner, a dusty display case held neatly folded wedding attire and small jewelry pieces. The atmosphere felt heavy, suffocating. Tom's skin crawled as he realized he wasn't the first. He was part of a terrifying pattern. As he turned to leave, his eyes landed on a folder atop a pedestal in the center of the room. The label read, T.J. Prepared. His throat tightened. His own initials. A wave of nausea hit him. He stumbled back, nearly knocking over a nearby stack of framed portraits. His legs felt like lead as he forced himself to leave the room and return to his bedroom. Breathing heavily, Tom slammed the door behind him and collapsed on the bed, sweat soaking his shirt. The walls of his new luxurious life suddenly felt like the walls of a prison, and he knew that whatever this woman had planned for him, it wasn't the fairy tale escape he had dreamed of. Tom sat on the edge of his bed, his hands trembling violently. The images from the hidden room replayed in his mind like a broken film reel. The photographs, the initials on drawers, the personal items stripped of life and story, and then that folder with his initials staring back at him like a silent death sentence. He tried to steady his breath, but every inhale felt shallow, as if the walls themselves were closing in on him. Tom's mind raced with questions. Were those men killed? Did they try to escape? Was he next? He thought back to the small, calculated gestures Margaret had shown, her gentle questions that now felt like interrogations, her unblinking stares that had seemed caring but were actually assessments. He realized that every detail of his life had been watched and recorded. His meals, his movements, even his private moments. Everything had been part of some twisted ritual she had perfected over decades. Panicked. Tom stumbled to the bathroom and splashed cold water on his face. He looked up and barely recognized the man staring back, eyes bloodshot, lips pale, a haunted expression replacing the naive ambition he once carried. Suddenly, he heard soft footsteps outside the bedroom door. His heart jumped to his throat. Without thinking, he turned off the bathroom light and pressed himself against the wall, straining to listen. The footsteps paused right outside. Asterisk Margaret's voice floated through the silence. Soft and chilling. Tom, are you awake? Asterisk Tom remained frozen, his mind screaming at him to run. But where? The mansion was isolated, surrounded by thick woods and tall iron gates. Even if he escaped the house, he doubted he could outrun her, not just physically, but also her reach, her power, her money. Asterisk, the door creaked open. Through a sliver of light, he saw Margaret standing there in a long silk robe, her silver hair perfectly pinned, her face calm. In her hand, she held a small revolver, delicate and polished, like a vintage collector's piece. Asterisk, I had hoped you wouldn't find that room so soon, she said, her voice low but steady. They always get curious. I suppose that's part of what makes you all so interesting. Asterisk Tom felt his knees weaken. His mouth opened but no words came out. Asterisk Margaret stepped forward, her eyes locking onto his, unblinking. I chose you because you were different, she continued. You had a softness, a vulnerability. I thought you might stay loyal, but curiosity always ruins everything. Asterisk, he tried to speak, to reason with her, to say, I'll stay, I'll do whatever you want. But his lips quivered, betraying his terror. Asterisk, she raised the gun slightly, her finger resting gently on the trigger. I wanted a companion, not just another entry in my collection, she whispered. But now, asterisk Tom's mind spun wildly. He lunged toward her in a final desperate move, trying to knock the gun away, but Margaret anticipated him. A single deafening shot rang out, echoing through the vast mansion halls. Asterisk Tom crashed to the ground, pain searing through his shoulder. His vision blurred as he pressed his hand to the wound, warm blood seeping between his fingers. Margaret stood over him, her face expressionless, the revolver steady in her elegant hand. Asterisk she knelt down, her robe brushing against his face as she leaned closer. You could have had a beautiful life here, she murmured, almost tenderly. No more worries, no more struggles. All you had to do was trust me. Asterisk Tom's breath came in ragged gasps. He tried to crawl backward, his other hand slipping in. His own blood, Margaret's perfume, a faint mix of lavender and something musky, filled his senses, making him nauseous. Asterisk she tilted her head, studying him like a rare artifact. You know, she continued, every one of them believed they were smarter than me, but they could escape. But in the end, they all chose the same fate. They chose to betray my trust. Asterisk Margaret reached out and gently stroked his cheek with her free hand, her touch cold and clinical. You remind me of the first one. He also had those big, innocent eyes. She sighed wistfully, almost as if she felt genuine sadness. Asterisk Tom tried to speak, but only a weak gurgle came out. He felt his strength draining rapidly. His vision narrowed, the edges of the room dissolving into a dark tunnel. Asterisk Margaret stood up and slowly circled him, her silk robe gliding across the marble floor. After tonight, there will be another plaque in that room, she said, her voice distant and dreamy. Another drawer filled, another chapter in my collection. Asterisk as she aimed the revolver at his head. Tom's mind raced through every choice that had led him here, his ambition, his desperation. The moment he said yes to her proposal, he realized, in that final breath, that his hunger for an easy way out had cost him everything. There was no hero's escape, no sudden miracle. A sharp click, a final cold stare, and darkness swallowed him whole. Asterisk days later. The mansion returned to its silent routine. Margaret attended another charity gala, dressed elegantly, smiling graciously at her guests. In her eyes, no trace of what had happened remained, only the icy calm of a master collector. Asterisk meanwhile, deep inside the mansion, a new brass plaque. It was quietly added to the wall. Tom Jenkins, 2025. His belongings were carefully sorted into a drawer labeled T, completing another meticulous chapter in Margaret's private museum of forgotten lives. Asterisk and somewhere beyond the iron gates and high walls. The world continued turning, oblivious to the horrors hidden behind the perfect facade of a lonely old widow's love.